Hello friends! Welcome to another 2 hours 1 life tutorial. This time I'm going to show you how to create a spawn code and start your own Eve camp. I'll also show how I usually tackle the early game challenges and will progress as far as the Bronze Age. Hope you find it helpful. Let's get started. In the game's main menu, you'll want to click on Specific under Where to Spawn. Here you can make up a hard-to-guess password or code using letters and numbers. This will prompt the game to give you a random spawn location that you can return to at any time by re-entering the same code. Now I've spawned in, the first thing I want to do is type no BB, which will make me infertile. This allows me to play on my own without other players spawning in as babies that I'll have to take care of. It's pretty hard to take care of babies right away in the game. I'm gonna barely have enough food to feed myself for a little while here, so I want to turn off the ability to have babies. If I do decide to turn it back on at some point later, I can type yes BB. So the first thing I want to do is make sure that my spawn point is livable. Luckily, I've spawned in very near to one of these green grassy areas, which I find is easiest to settle in, especially when you're first getting started. What I want to work on now is collecting up food and sort of starting a little bit of a base camp. I don't have any clothing, so I'm going to get cold quickly, which will make me hungry quickly. I'm also collecting up milkweed for thread, because you need that for a lot of the early tools. The first tool I'm going to craft is a snare, so that I can catch some rabbits and make some clothing. I've made a thread using 2 milkweed plants, and here I can use my sharp stone to make stakes. If I type /snare in the text box, it'll pop up a menu which will help me build it. I see I need a rope, which means that I need to gather some more thread before I can finish making my snare. There we go. The snare is complete. I'm going to put it into my basket. Make sure I don't forget to eat something. I am trying to eat yum food as well, as much as possible. It is difficult in the early game, so just sort of be mindful, keep an eye on that food meter as you go. Heading into this yellow area, I will find some rabbits eventually will pop out of these holes. I am also taking note that there's a desert nearby. Ideally, I'm looking for a family rabbit hole, which has a baby as well. That will allow the rabbits to spawn back a little bit faster. And since I've got some time, I'm just going to scout around and see if I can find a rabbit hole that has a baby as well. So now I've found the family rabbit hole. I'll add my snare and wait for the rabbit to come out. I'm also going to take advantage of some of the wild food that grows in this biome. There's a wild carrot that I can dig up with my sharp stone. There's another family rabbit hole here, and as I place the snare, I'm taking note in the top left of my screen at the coordinates so that I don't forget where I put my snare. It's pretty easy to lose tools, especially in the early game, and it's kind of frustrating when it takes so many resources to build a tool each time. I've decided on this area for my camp for now. I noticed that there's a wellspring nearby, as well as a bunch of soil, which makes it a pretty ideal place to start setting up my little camp. Now I'm working on my next tool, which uses a rope, which I've just assembled, and a straight shaft, plus a sharp stone. And I've made a hoe. This will allow me to hoe this fertile soil. Again, someone else might choose to build a hatchet first, which I might do in another playthrough. I went with the hoe first just because I see how many milkweed are around. I know I'm going to be able to have a lot of rope if I need it so that I can make the hatchet, so I can make the bow to make a fire. There's a lot of options here. And this next tool is going to be a knife so that I can start processing these rabbits for clothing and food. I made a rope and a short shaft, combined them to tie them. And now I'm just going to look for some flint, which I see here. Using a sharp stone on it will allow me to get a piece of flint, and I can bring that back to where I was assembling my knife. And there we go, we have a knife. I'm also going to grab, after processing this rabbit and removing the fur, I cut down a sapling, which gives me a skewer so that I can get my rabbit ready for roasting. Jumping ahead back to the prairie, collecting up this rabbit and snare. And I'm going to reset my snare so that I can just keep bringing in rabbits, which are going to give me food and clothing. Clothing is really important in the early game because it helps keep you warm. And since there can be a shortage of food, you want to try to stay as warm as possible. I'm also wanting to build a backpack, which means I won't be carrying baskets around all the time. Back at camp, I've processed the second rabbit, and now I've created a tied short shaft, plus a sharp stone to make my first hatchet. This is going to allow me to start making kindling for a fire, and I can get these rabbits cooked up, so I'll have another food source as well. I'm also going to make a fire bow drill, which requires this bent branch and more rope, plus a short shaft. Now that my bow drill is complete, I can use my hatchet to make kindling. I will also need some tinder from the juniper tree, and then a leaf from any other tree. You put the bow drill onto the shaft to make a little spark, transfer it to the leaf, and then onto the tinder before adding, when it's ready, the kindling. I've made my first fire. Now I need to wait actually for the fire to burn down just to coals before I try to cook the rabbits. Jumping ahead, the fire's burned down, and now I can cook the rabbit just on these coals. After skewering 2 rabbits, I'll be able to eat them once I'm hungry again. But for now, I'm going to head out for more supplies. Now I've brought back a 3rd rabbit to my camp, which I've skinned and cooked, as well as a bit more thread. I'm going to take this wild onion and get it planted in my garden. That'll give me yet another food that I can eat, as well as this garlic. Now I see that I'm hungry, I can eat my first rabbit, and from the bone, I'm able to make a needle. Now I've gathered 2 more rabbits, plus this seed from the wild carrot, and I'll bring all these items back to my camp. I'll plant this carrot in my garden and remove the furs from these 2 rabbits. Now that I have 5 rabbit furs, I can start making myself a backpack. 4 full furs plus 1 cut fur, which I'll take 2 pieces, all in a pile, and then sew with a needle and thread. We've got a backpack. Very useful tool, especially in the early game when you're doing a lot of gathering. The next thing that I want to build is an oven. So with this sharp rock, I can take down some tool reeds and combine them with this clay to make Adobe. Using this round stone on the piece of Adobe begins an oven. And if I add a second piece, I get my first clay oven. Next, I want to make myself a kiln and a forge. Using a sharp rock again, I can cut the tool and combine it with clay. I've decided to put the kiln and the forge above the garden for now, just to keep them out of the way of the kitchen. You make the kiln the same way. By hitting it with a round stone to get the base, first you make an oven, and then you make a kiln. This will let me make bowls and plates, which will be really helpful. I noticed that my craving is a drilled coconut, and since there was a coconut tree so nearby, it's one that's worth acting on. I'll take these coconuts back to camp, and I'll eat them later. To eat these coconuts, I need a flint tip. I can make it by using the sharp stone on a piece of flint, and then I combine it with my bow drill. The knife will remove the husk of the coconut, and then I can use the bow drill with the flint tip to drill into it. And that satisfies my craving. The other thing you can do with a coconut is crack it against a big stone using a round stone. You can also hit it with an axe later in the game, but we don't have an axe yet. Using another rabbit that I caught, I'm going to process these. And I'm going to make myself a water pouch using a needle and thread plus a cut fur. The water pouch is really handy for the early game to be able to water your garden. I'm also going to make myself some clothing using a needle and thread and one rabbit fur. I can make myself a loincloth. The water pouch can be filled up at any of these goose ponds, and each fill is good for watering one plot in my garden. So I can water the onion, the garlic, and the carrots that I've planted so far. Now I'm going to leave camp and do a little bit of scouting around. Since I have my kiln built, I can soon build a forge, and then I'll be able to craft different metal materials. Ideally, I would like to find something that looks like these bear caves, except it's closed in, and it's labeled ore vein. They'll spawn in these gray badlands area, which is why I explored that one. I didn't find one, unfortunately, so I'll have to keep looking. Jumping ahead, I did a little more scouting and still didn't manage to find an ore vein, but that's okay, there's lots to do at camp still. I can see that this garlic is ready, so I'll pick it. Once I get a bowl, I can replant that garlic as well and get even more cloves next time. For now, I'm going to process this rabbit, both of them. And with these two furs together, I can make myself another piece of clothing to help stay a little bit warmer with this hat. Here we go. Back in the swamplands, I'm going to find a clay deposit, and with a basket, I can bring back quite a few pieces of clay. My plan with this clay is to start making some bowls and some plates. Using the round stone on the clay one time gets a bowl. 2 times would make a plate, and 3 times returns it back to a lump of clay. If you combine 2 bowls together, you'll get a crock. Those are useful a little bit later for making things like soups or even cement. I notice that my carrots are ready to pick, so I'll pick all except for one, which I'm going to let go to seed, so that I'll have some more seeds for carrots later. In order to fire these bowls, I'll need some tongs, so I'll make a straight shaft and then cut it with my knife. These wooden tongs will allow me to fire the bowls in the kiln. Now, my bow drill has been used to open coconuts, so I need to remove the flint tip with the knife before I'm able to use it to start a fire again. And I misclicked and didn't get my last bowl fired. But that's okay, I'll be starting the kiln up again pretty soon to make some bowls as well. And now that I have a bowl, I can get this garlic replanted. Crushing it with a round stone gives me cloves of garlic, and I can just replant the entire bowl into this row here. I can also use my bowl to get some more water from these goose ponds. And since I have bowls now to collect water, I can make the bellows for my forge using the water pouch and a pair of tongs. I'll also need to craft a clay nozzle to finish off the tongs. I collected more clay from the swamp, so using this stick, I can move a clay nozzle from one of the lumps of clay. That will be fired in the kiln, just like I fired the bowls. I'll also go ahead and make some plates. I rebuilt a fire and relit my kiln so I could fire the nozzle, the remaining bowl, and then all of these plates. I've made some more Adobe, and I'm ready to craft my forge. It's built the same way that the kiln is. You begin with the oven base, and then a clay oven, and then a kiln. And by adding the bellows, it creates the forge. I noticed that my food craving right now is omelette, and since I have plates, I'm finally able to make that craving. So I'll collect an egg and a flat stone and bring these back to my camp. I noticed I still have hot coals, so I can put the flat stone directly on the hot coals without waiting for the fire to burn out. An egg in a bowl, stirred with a weak stick, directly onto the flat stone, and then quickly removed with a plate. If you leave it too long, it will burn. I did grab a second egg as well, so I can make two, so I'll have one for later. And the omelets are made. Now that I have my forge built, I'm ready to start collecting up the materials to make bronze. This cassiterite is one ingredient, and the other is this copper. And I'll collect a few of each so that I can make more than one batch of bronze. I also want to gather some wheat, which I'll use to make pies. The wheat can be threshed with any uncut branch, and then collected in a bowl, and crushed into flour using a round stone. I can also use this bowl to bring some water, to combine with my flour to make a dough. This dough makes enough for 4 pies, but I'll need 4 plates, which I don't think I have right now. I'm going to fill the first pie with berries from this bush to make a berry pie. For the second pie, I'll combine a bush full of berries plus 1 carrot. These need to be mashed first with a sharp stone or a knife before adding to the pie crust for a berry carrot pie. The third pie will be carrot on its own, which also needs to be cut or mashed. And that makes a carrot pie. So now I have 3 different pies here, which will each give me a yum bonus as well. I'll get the oven ready by adding in some kindling. And then I can start a fire, which I'll transfer into the oven and cook the pies. For the Adobe oven, you do need to wait for the flames to die down before you're able to cook the pies. I'm also going to use the fire to fire up the kiln and make some more bowls and plates. Now I can start making tin and copper in order to make bronze. Cassiterite goes into the bowls, and the copper goes into different bowls and is crushed with a round stone. To make charcoal, I'll light up my kiln and then cover it with a piece of Adobe. After waiting a few seconds, the charcoal is ready, and I can transfer it into my forge. I'm also going to make an additional batch of charcoal, so I have some to mix with the cassiterite to make tin. After a few more seconds, this charcoal is ready as well. I can add individual pieces of the charcoal in with the cassiterite and then cover each with a bowl. These crucibles can then be cooked in my forge by using the tongs to pick them up and then firing each one individually. I'll need to wait for them to cool before I can combine them and then fire them again. Now I'm combining the completed tin and the completed copper in a bowl with a lid to make a bronze crucible. This can be fired in my forge and it will make bronze. And I'm ready to make my first bronze in the forge. Fire that crucible, and then I'm just waiting for it to cool. And I can remove the bronze ingot, which will need to be fired yet again before I can turn it into a hammer. Use the round stone, hit it one time, and that will make a bronze hammerhead. I just need to combine that hammerhead with a short shaft. And then the bronze hammer will allow me to hammer out pieces of bronze into other tools. There we go, our first bronze tool. Jumping ahead, I had gone north to check for more ore veins, which I still did not find, but I did find more cassiterite and more copper, which I'll use to make more bronze tools. Jumping ahead, I've made some more charcoal and a few piles of kindling, and I can fire these crucibles. I can also fire another bronze ingot, and using my hammer, I'll hit it a number of times as I try to decide what I wanted to make. Eventually, I'll settle on making an axe. I can make the axe head into an axe by combining it with a long shaft. And there you go, another bronze tool. The axe can be used to chop entire trees, which will give you firewood and often logs as well. We'll save the logs for now, but each firewood, when chopped with the bronze axe, will give 2 kindling. This makes it a lot more efficient for foraging and cooking. And we will stop there for today. Next time we will continue building bronze tools and also into the Iron Age. If you watched all the way to the end, I appreciate you so much. Please make sure that you subscribe, give a like, and leave a comment. It really keeps me motivated. Thanks for watching.